Hello everyone, Leaf Reed here, and today I'm going to tackle a slightly different topic. It doesn't involve reading, really, but I want to talk about my favorite manga of all time. And it's funny because I have tried to find it in hard copy multiple times, but I simply just can't find it. And that manga is Ai-Ren. And as I understand it, it translates roughly to lover. Or love person. And the manga itself is pretty short. It's about only 5 volumes, and I have it all saved on my computer, but again, I've never seen a physical copy of it anywhere or on sale. And I think it was written in the mid to late 90s, and I've never read something that was, I don't know, as philosophical and as interesting as this manga. What it was, it's a very simple story where you have the main boy, Ikaru, and he's just a normal 16-year-old boy. I know how this sounds, but he doesn't go to high school, so it's atypical in the sense that well, you never see his parents because they're dead, so there's actually a reason for why they never show the parents in the series. And so what happens is the Earth itself lives in this weird kind of dystopian utopian state, and it's unclear as to why that is until you get further into the story. But Ikaru basically lives all alone. His parents died in some accident, and he's living in some seaside town somewhere in Japan. And so in order to help him cope with his loss, he's assigned an Ai-Ren, which is a love person. So it's a synthetic human, or it's not an android, it's like more like a replicant kind of thing, and that'll play into the main storyline, called I. And so I just means love or yes. And so it's really interesting how each chapter unfolds, where Ikaru and I, they kind of have this nice little life they have together, and they're kind of able to live and find a reason to kind of keep on going. But Ikaru, either there's something that happens or transpires that gives him this pang of nihilism, this sense that there's no reason to live, or that the world is essentially doomed and it's on the decline, and that there's no point to living, essentially. And he has these visions of this dark figure coming to him in the night and essentially killing him, and then I kind of is able to give him a reason to live again. And so it just deals with these kind of complex emotions between these characters. And I herself, there's even an arc where she even begins to resent Ikaru, and she has her own kind of doubts and nihilistic tendencies, and then she kind of brings herself out of it. And so it's this very soft, kind of a pseudo ecchi kind of beginning to this series, where I is the partner to Ikaru and compliments him in every way. And even though he knows that her purpose is to create it for the purpose of love, he still kind of gets past that and tries to love her as like a real person, essentially. And so the whole story goes into what is the point of love, what is the purpose of being, what is the point of existence, and overcoming all of these kinds of big ideas with very small little scenarios and things that they do together in activities. And then it kind of goes into the other kind of lore around the world, which essentially they live in a kind of children of men scenario, where there's a whole you have these two characters, and it's very lovey-dovey. It's not really ecchi because it's really about their relationship together. But then it goes off into this conspiracy-like land about aliens visiting Earth and trying to give them the tools of evolution, and also a bunch of terrorists that sent off a bunch of nuclear codes off in the late 20th century and basically decimated the world and reduced the world's population to like 10% or something. And then through science and contact with this alien race, humanity is able to, I think, genetically evolve itself to this pristine, state in which they live, for like, I don't know, hundreds of years. They have, eternal youth and all this stuff, and they're able to make synthetic humans, but no one can get pregnant. And so there's no children. And so this global kind of nihilism descends upon the human race, where it's like, yes, we have all these elements of paradise and evolution and all the fruits of wisdom, but there are no children, and there is no future for the human race. And so it's really interesting how that branching overall theme and struggle is also reflected in Ikaru. And he doesn't even, I don't think he knows anything about this. He kind of has like tangentially information, and a lot of this information is introduced through his friend, who is this doctor essentially, who knows about all this stuff and is trying to find an engineer solution to it. And it's like trying to find a reason to go on, to find that love which animates and brings people on. And I think that is kind of the answer, or the end of this story, which is really amazing, is that love is the essence which allows people to persevere in the face of absolute certain disaster. And so, I can't remember what came first. It would make sense that the terrorists decided to extinguish the human race after they found out that, there's no point. I can't remember if it was before or after that, or if it was just like a nihilist kind of Malthusian kind of cult, in the sense that, humanity is overpopulated, we can't support ourselves, and their diatribe is that, well, similar to the Christian context, all evil essentially comes from human beings, so human beings should be wiped out to do away with evil. And so they, release all these, they release biological weapons, not nuclear weapons. I think nukes might have been part of that, but I can't remember. Anyway, there's this kind of, so there's the whole other side story about like this crypto UN organization and these aliens, and who look like, humanoids basically. And how the Earth was an old colony of theirs that they seeded millennia ago, and all this other stuff. And then it goes back to these two playing their lovey-dovey kind of interpersonal issues. So in a way, it very much reminds me of Evangelion, in the sense that you have these two worlds that are totally parallel. You have the internal world of the main character and the external world, and it's fascinating how they reflect each other, and the struggles of the people or the nation or the world are reflected in the individual. And so, again, Ikaru, he's confronted with different kinds of things, like, one day, does Ai really love me? Because she's a synthetic being made to love me. It's not real. One day I might die, or I might die, and I might die, or I might die, and what's the point? What's the point of us engaging in a relationship or going to the market or doing anything if existence is fleeting and there is no future? There's no future for us or for humanity. And it's about finding that essence of love or life, that I was literally made for Ikaru to not kill himself so that he would continue living. And to find that essence of life in death and in darkness and overcoming it is, that's in every chapter, and that's the cycle and rotation and the theme that goes on. And so it's an anti or a pro-existentialist piece of literature or manga, and I love it. I just love it. It's something that I read and it just clicked with me, and I just randomly came across it. No one recommended it to me, and ever since I've read it, it's always been something that I would consider to be a manga which surpasses its medium. It's something that could be a book or maybe a TV show or something, and I see no talk about it virtually online, about an anime adaptation or anything. And it's one of my favorite stories because it's so impactful and it's so dynamic, how it deals with those really heavy, broad themes and really just makes it super small. There's the infamous scene where they say happy birthday, and that is just it's so brutal. It's so it really reminds me of Kierkegaard's Existenz, where you have two opposite themes or ideas that are completely like opposite to each other and should be in conflict, but they're existing at the same time, which creates this form of angst. That how can there be so much suffering, so much hope in the world? How can there be so much of this and yet so much of this? How can there be all this? And you're not given a reason. You just exist in the hypocrisy of the situation. And so, there's the existence of the bad existence and the good existence intertwining and becoming a new thing. And again, similar to what I talked about Hegelian dialectics and synthesis being the primary source or force of just energy or ideas or genesis in the world. It's so interesting how that kind of ends on the note where, again, as long as you have the essence inside yourself, you can move forward. And so the ending is more or less, if you care to read it, is that somehow, despite everything, I should mention in a previous chapter, though, the doctor is actually, who's tasked with extending the human race, is infatuated, and she's in love with Ikaru, the young boy, to the effect, like, it's such a, God, it is a weird, erotic and heartbreaking moment. Well, not really erotic, but, it's where the doctor shows Ikaru, like, old porn videos from the old world, and says this is how people express their love. And because it's not even that they don't even have the desire for lust, it's that it's been genetically just destroyed. So they don't even understand it as a concept. They don't feel anything. And so they imitate the sex scenes from the video in an attempt for her to express her feelings towards Ikaru. And it's just this silly, goofy thing where they can't feel anything, or it doesn't mean anything to them, and they can't. And Ikaru can't even get an erection. So it's. He says, why isn't it working? So it's this weird, just heartbreaking thing where something that should be so natural and so basic and so taboo or untaboo is just not possible. And it's you just feel this loss, this immense feeling of despair. And the scientist herself, she feels like she can't convey what she feels for this boy, and so she basically leaves and says, well, you've graduated from me, there's nothing more I can teach you. And it's funny because she also becomes intensely jealous of the Ai-Ren that was created for Ikaru, because he's actually in love with her. He feels about her the way she feels about him. And so she goes into her own kind of spiral, like, well, what's the point of extending the human race if I can't, express or complete my desires? And this is all a very short manga. It's really, really well done. Again, a lot of things similar to Evangelion. There's a lot more, I guess, negativity that is then like immediately flipped on its head with extreme positivity. It's kind of not exactly bipolar, but it's just a really, really interesting manga, and how those themes of hope and despair just intertwine, and how despair transforms into hope, or or how you work through that existential nihilism. It's really, really cool, and I just really like it. And plus, Ikaru and I are very cute because there's not that sexual element to their relationship, because it's been modified out of them, that it's actually just a very sweet slice of life. A lot of the time it's just very nice, very innocent, very pure. And of course, the ending that I was leading up to is that somehow through some weird genetic or whatever modification, or like some fluke, Ikaru is able to get Ai pregnant. And I can't remember exactly the context of that scene, because the unfortunate implication is that, because Ikaru also, not only did his parents die, but he also has like some weird illness that is not related to the disease that has been plagued on humanity, where he's going to die soon. So somehow, Ikaru and Ai essentially die, but their child is still born, and it's kind of through like some like in vitro like tech tube or whatever. And so the last chapter is alluding to the fact that their you can't tell if it's a daughter or a son, is basically going through their old belongings, their sketchbook, their photo book, their memories, and it's almost like the manga you've been reading is the memories that they left to their child, and they're learning about why they decided to have this child even though they were going to die, and why they decided to extend the human race, and why one needs to believe in themselves and believe in love and make the decision that despite everything and all the awful things around you, that you still decide to move forward and move into a world that is uncertain with giving new life. And that's how it ends, basically. It's a very powerful, short series. I highly recommend it. I still can't find a physical copy to this day, but yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. Short, philosophical, no filler. Well, actually, technically, I mean, all the romance stuff is kind of filler, but for the sake of, what's the purpose of life? The filler episode, in a way. But yeah, I think there was, I don't think this is in the actual manga, but it was on the site that I read it from, which was, God, maybe probably a decade ago now, called Anime Fox or Fox Manga or something. And the opening page is a really interesting image of a tree that, as soon as it started, coming up and blooming into its leaves, it became a nuclear cloud. And so I think that really perfectly demonstrates the dichotomy that Ai-Ren tries to mirror onto the human race, that you have infinite beauty and infinite love and infinite destruction and infinite creation all working together in one synthesized, dualistic manner that is always at least creating something new. And if it doesn't create something new, it kind of falls into despair, nihilism, destroys itself. But it's the idea that life comes from, can still come forward despite everything. Yeah, I don't know. That's it. It's a pretty short story. I kind of quickly reread most of it, parts of it. It's definitely worth a read. And yeah, that's my favorite manga. Anyway, guys, hope you like this. And as always, keep reading.